Hello, Gaz Williams here, and today I'm looking at the Elektron Analog Heat MKII, specifically as a mastering device, because I think this is a killer product and works just so brilliantly for mastering purposes. Now, I've done commercial mastering for around 20 years, so I know a thing or two about this, and I've worked on hundreds of albums. So generally when I'm looking to master, I try to do as little processing as I can get away with, but just make sure that what I do is as effective as possible. Now, mostly mastering involves taking a finished mix down and preparing it for either CD, vinyl or streaming, and there might be different loudness levels that you go for. You also may do a little bit of corrective EQ and also some mix compression as well. But also, what's a very nice part of mastering, though, is to apply some kind of excitement or some sort of glue, if you will. One of the downsides of recording digitally is sometimes that there's too much separation and things just feel like they need to be bound together a little bit. That was one of the things that was nice about recording to tape. Tape would have this natural compression and it would sound really, really good, especially if you just drove it slightly hard into it. You'd get this, you'd get more tape saturation, and it would have the effect of binding things together. Now, with computers and with being able to recall projects 100% and stuff, using tape, it's just an added kind of inconvenience. But what makes the Analog Heat so good is that it comes with a software component, essentially a plugin that's part of the Overbridge suite from Elektron, that allows you to treat the physical analog device as a plugin. Let's look at the screen. Here we go. Here's the plugin. Now, I've got a very, very simple chain here. I've got essentially an instance of Overbridge running the Analog Heat, and also a trusty Izotope Ozone, which in this case I've got it, the only thing turned on, I've just got the maximizer. But I will use, generally we'll use other modules from Ozone 2, for instance the multi-band dynamics, and I use quite a lot of dynamic EQ as well. There is a module in Ozone which is called the Exciter, and if I put that at the front of the chain here, you can kind of see the Analog Heat as essentially doing the same sort of role as what the Exciter would do, which is again just maybe to put some sparkle, a little bit of drive, a little bit of saturation, those kind of things. Okay, but I'm going to disable that for now, and then let's go back on to the Analog Heat. So the software component then is a exact replica on screen of what you see physically. So if I was to change a knob, we can see, so I'm just changing which of the character effects that we're using here. We can see as I'm changing it on the physical device, it's changing on the screen as well. So it's a brilliant, what you see is what you get kind of situation. Now, what's also very cool to know about this is the Overbridge allows you to use this. I'm using this over USB, but I'm not having to use the Analog Heat as a USB interface. I'm using my regular interface, but essentially the plugin handles all the inputs and outputs. So you don't need to set up anything specifically. You just install the Overbridge software and then the rest is all handled for you, and that's actually a lot smoother than you might think. So this is great then, because it means I can either adjust it by clicking on the software, or I can adjust it, which I much prefer to do, using the hardware interface. Now, the Analog Heat inside this little box are 8 different analog circuits, so 8 physical circuits. Now each one of those circuits has a different kind of distortion or kind of enhancer characteristic, and also each one of these circuits has its own dedicated EQ with a low and a high. Now those EQs, they're different depending on which character module that you select. I think that's very cool, because as you twist this further clockwise, it goes from these like clean boost, saturation, enhancement, mid drive, rough crunch, classic distortion, round fuzz and high gain. So it gets more dirtier as it goes round the clock. then those EQs are part of the circuit. So that's essentially 8 distortions and 8 EQs really, which I think is cool. We can see that on the screen in a moment, because you can kind of see how the EQ curves are different. Also on the analog heat, we've got a stereo filter. Now I'm going to disable the filter by pressing the 2 buttons here. I'm not going to use that in this particular case, but there is good reason to use it. Maybe we'll look at it in a bit. But the analog heat also has like an envelope follower and an LFO, and you can do all sorts of interesting creative stuff. Again, we're not going to use that in this instance, because we're focusing it as a mastering device. Along the bottom here, we've got the driver mount, wet level, and a dry wet. Now, why would you have a wet level and a dry wet? Well, it's really cool because when you're increasing drives, you can be adding more gain. Well, a wet level allows you to pull back any added gain. So when I'm toggling with this switch here between on and off, then it allows me to set, so I'm not actually adding any gain at this stage. I don't really want to be adding gain. I'll use Ozone for adding gain. I'm just going to use this for adding character. So I'm going to set the dry wet roughly to somewhere in the middle there. And we're going to start bringing in the wet level. I'm going to set the drive to about 50%, and we'll just use a clean boost now, because a clean boost can bring a really nice, quite subtle kind of enhancer quality. But as I say, as you go up through it, you get much more noticeable things. Let's have a listen to the song. Actually, let's bypass first. I'll have a little listen to the song. This song is from my band Rocket Gold Star, and it's going to be on our forthcoming album. Let's have a look.
Woke up, got out of bed, wrong head, wrong hat. The hardest thing I ever had to do. And still, like any...
I'm going to skip forward a little bit. When we hit the chorus, it gets quite a lot louder.
To me, someone's gonna help you out one day. It's just one day. You still got all the rest.
Okay, I'm sure you're going to get a bit fed up with this song, but anyway, that's the gist of the song. So it's quite a dynamic song, and these verses are a lot quieter than the choruses. So definitely a good candidate for a little bit of mix compression here, really. But anyway, the analog heat though is going to give a little bit of drive into the thing here. So okay, let's just play that verse again, and I'm going to bring it in. Okay, so now bring it to wet level. Let's match that there.
And still, like anyone, I have no heart. The disappointed angels sing to me.
Okay, they're similar.
And they said,
push the drive more.
Give it to me. Give it to me.
Right level back.
Someone's gonna help you out one day. It's just one day. You still got all the rest. And if they help you out,
pretty
don't
subtle.
you forget about them. Yes, oh yes, oh yes. Someone
Analog
will
EQ,
help
top
you
end.
out again. Don't you forget about your friends.
Off. Okay, so I'm going to keep balancing it.
The end of everything there is. No
More
stop.
drive.
Helplessly they fall into
Wet level back.
graves. One day, all
Bypass.
this will burn the sun. No guess. The disappointed angels sing to me.
So even just using this clean boost, we're getting, and we've got some top end coming in. try some bottom end as well. Quite fast.
Give it to
In.
me. Give it to me. Someone's gonna help you out. One day is just one day. You still got
Yeah.
all the rest. And if they help you out, don't you forget.
So the combination there of that little bit of top end and a little bit of bottom that I've added in conjunction with that drive just feels like it's binding it together a little bit. So, you know, I'm trying to be careful to make sure that I'm not getting any additional volume, because volume always sounds good. I'm listening out for hearing the quality of the music becoming a little bit more, I don't know, a bit more attitude really. Now, when I start changing these characters, there's a hell of a lot more attitude available. Let's have a look at that then. So the saturation.
Someone will help you.
Now, hear that really dirty now. But I'm going to back the drive down. More. Right, so I have to add a little bit more level. Now, if we look at the EQ on the graphics, on the plugin, when I turn up the bass here, look, it's like a bump. But on the clean boost, it's more of a shelf. So a bit more of like a. So let's try some of that.
And then
I like the sound of this.
and let the cherries on the table in the shed.
Without it.
And if
Now I can lean
there is
more wet. I'm leaning more into the wet now.
shake the screen
Hold back.
angels from your mind. And they said, someone's gonna help you out one day. It's just one day.
A bit too much. Let's back off there.
And if they help you out, don't you forget about them. Yes, oh yes. Someone's gonna help you out one day. It's just one day. You still got all the rest. And if
There,
they help
on.
you out, don't you forget about
Without it.
yes, oh yes, oh yes. Someone will help you.
Without? With it.
Don't you forget. Don't you forget. Don't you forget about your.
Bit wetter. Back it off the drive. I have to say that the metering is excellent on this, the Mark II. The screen is a bit bigger on the Mark II, so it allows you to get, you know, a much better visual kind of indication. I mean, you can also see on the screen a fantastic amount of visual feedback here. Okay, I'll just stop that a moment. So we can hear that the saturation now is really giving like quite a strong character now. Let me just play a bit of that again and just toggle it on and off. Off.
Give it to me.
On. A little bit more level.
Give it to me.
Off.
Someone's gonna help you out.
On.
One day is just one day.
Maybe a bit too much EQ there.
All the rest, and if they help you out,
Off.
don't you forget about them. Yes, oh yes, oh yes.
The art of mastering really is kind of subtlety and care, and it's really important that you always are very mindful. And as I say, this whole idea of making sure that the volume is constantly adjusted, so you are, you know, making sure that any qualitative adjustments that you're making are based on having a, you know, an objective viewpoint of being able to listen. Ozone's great in this respect, because on Ozone, let's just switch into Ozone a moment, you can enable, if you enable gain match, then when you turn things on and off, then it'll sort of make it sound at the same volume. So we don't have the facility on the Analog Heat, but you have to use your ears. But also the metering is really helpful in that respect. Let's just go back to the Analog Heat now. And Okay, so we've only just been using the clean boost and the saturation. Let's go on to the enhancement. So I'm going to play it and I'm going to switch from saturation to enhancement. There.
Give it to me. Give it to me. Someone's gonna help you out one day. It's just one day. You still got all.
It's probably easier. I'm going to, just for the sake of being able to hear the effect more, I'm going to turn the dry wet, so it's we're only listening to the wet sound now, so I'm taking out all the dry. Typically I would use a bit of parallel processing by blending in some of this into the dry signal, but I'll do this wet just for the sake of hearing the differences clearer. Enhancement.
Yes, oh yes, oh yes. Someone will help you out again. Don't you forget about your friends.
Ooh.
The end.
Now you can see that the EQ curve changes quite dramatically.
One day,
nice.
all this will burn.
Definitely needs a bit of EQ, doesn't it?
And they said,
Bypass? Ooh. Okay. That's getting a bit louder. Okay. There we are. The level's a lot more matched now. We can hear the enhancement.
give it to me. Someone's gonna help you out one day. It's just
Without?
one day. You still got
With.
all the rest. And if they help you out, don't you forget.
Okay, so I'm using it a little bit more extreme here than I probably would, but you can hear that it's really bringing something good into this song. It's helping the energy of the song somehow feel a little bit more urgent. It feels a little bit more, it's got a bit more kind of drive and intensity, which suits the song. When you're mastering, you do always have to be very mindful of what you're actually doing and what you're trying to achieve. So I think in this particular case, the song is a three-piece kind of live rock band, really, with minimal overdubs, reflecting what it would be like in a sort of club with the band playing in front of you. It is that kind of production as opposed to a more, abstract or electronic kind of soundscape. I hope you've enjoyed this little video of looking at using the analog heat as a mastering tool. As I say, fantastic box, so much potential with it, and just using it, just as I was doing in the earlier part of the video, in subtle ways can really bring such a quality in there that just, that I don't think you can match that with the digital processing. It just has that little analog extra there that I think is superb. Anyway, I've been Gaz Williams. Hope you've enjoyed this. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider doing that because it'd be great. And I'll see you in the next video. Cheerio.